All right, 23 before 7 o'clock. We'll be back in just a moment with a lady named Gluck Lerner who wrote a book on the Holocaust called The Silence. And she's a survivor, lives now in Asheville, and everything's looking up. Be back in just a moment when Good Morning Atlanta returns. Good morning. It's 14 degrees out, and it's 21 minutes before the hour of 7 o'clock. We have with us Gluck Lerner, who's a resident of Asheville, but more importantly, the author of a book called The Silence. Really welcome. Why did you call the book The Silence?
Thank you.
It's a difficult period in your life to speak of.
It's partly my silence for 34 years and also the silence of the martyrs that have been exterminated, and their voices could never be heard, only in the memories of the survivors and in the world and in our hearts. And the babies, their voices were killed before they were able even to talk.
You are a survivor of the Holocaust, a very black period in everyone's history. I understand that the book is published by Lerner Stewart, and they said that
Lyle Stewart.
Yeah, right. I'm sorry, Lyle Stewart. They say that they publish such a book every 2 years or so, just whether they make a profit or not, and they don't, just to remind people so that people will not forget. Let's go back to this this period. Now, you began your life as a child as a Jew in Hungary. Is that right?
Yes, Dan.
What was your first inkling that things were going wrong?
I actually didn't know that things were going wrong. We were always known that we were Jewish people because we were told, but that didn't matter because we were Jewish after all. But when 1944 Hitler came in, that's when everything was ended for us Hungarian Jews.
I understand that one morning a town crier came out and said all Jews will be out in front of your homes in 2 hours with just the clothes on your back. That must have been a terrible time. How did your neighbors react to this, the people who had been your friends all along?
The neighbors had no reactions.
They didn't come to your defense? They didn't say, we're sorry,
No.
or do anything to help?
No one said a word. No one. Everyone was stunned. Of course, there was no opposition. Eichmann came into Hungary, and he had a very easy position because the Hungarians fully cooperated.
This is something I've always wanted to know, and I don't understand why there's such a difference. The Sabras, the natives of Israel, are some of the most vicious, tenacious fighters the world has ever known. Yet their ancestors marched quietly to the cars to be hauled off to be killed. Why? Why wasn't there resistance? Why didn't you fight?
Well, that is because, number one, we had nothing to fight with, and we didn't know anything. There was no communication. There was no warning. We didn't know anything. We were so ignorant to the fact that it was just unbelievable. And as to the Sabras of Israel today, they know that we haven't got a chance. We cannot keep quiet. And the only way to survival is to be aware.
So you really didn't know what was happening then? And
Not at all.
You just quietly marched wherever you were told? You didn't have any inkling of what was to happen? And so there was no organized resistance?
No, the Germans were very well organized. They did that beautiful machine that was corrupted and murdered. What we didn't know, even in the cattle cars when we were in Auschwitz, when we got out in Auschwitz on the railroad tracks, we didn't know where we were. That was a station, there was no name.
How old were you when the nightmare began, and how old when you were finally free?
I was 15, just about 16 in Auschwitz. That's where I had my birthday.
And then when it was all over, how old were you?
Not 17 yet.
So you lived through what is ordinarily a beautiful time in a girl's life in a nightmare.
Of course.
What sustained you those terrible hours? It must have been terribly depressing and frightening and fearful. Why did you come through this, such a bright person with an optimistic viewpoint?
I was young and I was strong, and the strength was that I was together with my sister. She really kept me going mentally, and also my 2 other cousins. So the 4 of us, we had a sense of a security that I wasn't alone. Perhaps alone I would have never survived.
So there were 6 young people who managed to stay together and bolster each other.
Right.
You lost well, the majority of your family, didn't you?
Yes, we did. Even as I heard Dr. Schwartz today with the scientific advances and the technology, it would have been very difficult to exterminate 6 million people. And the Germans very well succeeded.
The Germans did it.
37 years ago.
There's a continuing hunt for those who are responsible. The name of the man, Simon Wiesenthal, is that it?
Yes.
Who is constantly hunting out the Nazis and those who are accused of war crimes. I understand that was it last week or the week before, he announced that he's getting close to the angel of death, Dr.
Mengele.
Did you ever have any experiences with this man, with Dr. Mengele, or any of those people who were hired?
Dr. Mengele was in charge of the separations in Auschwitz.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know at the time that his name was Dr. Mengele, but he, at the flick of the finger, he showed us that we're going on this side and that my mother was going on the death side.
You mean at one point
Yes.
all of you came out and this man pointed to your mother and sent her to her death, although you didn't know it at that time?
We didn't.
And the rest of you to go to work, to camps?
To the life side, that's right.
Are you bitter? Are you
Pardon?
Are you angry? Are you bitter?
No, I'm not angry and I'm not bitter. I'm a history. I'm a survival. And that's why I wrote the book. So people should know, and the world should never forget what happened.
It was 37 years ago. Many of those who had first-hand experience have gotten sick and died of natural causes, died of old age. And there are those of you who are still alive and have put down thoughts in a book such as The Silence. And I thank you for that, so that the world will never forget. And
Thank you.
The happy part of it is that you are living in Asheville, you are an American citizen, you have a beautiful daughter who was Miss North Carolina?
Yes, in 1970 and 71.
Well, we thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And I wish you the very best of luck, a bright and happy life to you. Thank you for helping us to never forget what happened those terrible years.
Thank you.
It's Lily Lerner, a survivor of the Holocaust, the writer of a book that is not written with the broad strokes of a Steinbeck or a Hemingway, but a book that you will never forget, called The Silence. It is now 13 minutes before 7 o'clock. It is 14 degrees. When we come back on Good Morning Atlanta, we'll see